Let's talk a little bit about calling methods in Objective-C. This is one of the areas where a lot of people find this a little unusual. If you're coming from a regular C-based language background, C, ActionScript, JavaScript, C++, Java, C#, you're probably used to this kind of format of calling methods on an object. Object name, dot, method name, and then parentheses for whether it accepts any arguments or not. So something like this, myObject.SomeMethod, parentheses ending with a semicolon. In Objective-C, it's a little different. You're using the name of the object, then a space, then the name of the method, surrounded by square brackets. What we're officially doing here is something called messaging. We are sending the message SomeMethod to the object myObject. And yes, this does feel different from other languages. Think about it this way. Objective-C being a superset of C. It's based on top of C. There has to be some way to tell the compiler that this particular piece is a object-oriented call, and we're using it by marking it out with these square brackets. Some people have a huge problem with the square brackets, but there's no way around it. You're just going to have to get used to it. It becomes very straightforward after you've been doing it for a little while. So this would be a way that you would call a method that takes no arguments. You can, just like any other method call, expect to return some results. So let's say in a regular C-based language, you might have a line like this, result equals myObject.SomeMethod. You would instead have result equals open square bracket, myObject space SomeMethod, close square bracket. Very straightforward. It gets a little bit more complex in terms of formatting when you start calling a method that takes an argument. So let's say, standard way of doing it, myObject.SomeMethod, open parentheses, the name of an argument. This would be the way you do it in a classic C-based language. In Objective-C, you're back to the square brackets. myObject space SomeMethod, colon, name of the argument. And this is the way that we're going to do it in Objective-C. Up to this point, most people find not really much of a problem with converting their code, either in their head or in their code, onto Objective-C format. It's a little bit more complex when we have methods that take multiple arguments. Let's take a look at one of those. So let's imagine a more real situation. Let's say we've got a string operation happening. We've got a string called title, and I want to say title.insert. I want to insert a string into position 0. In a regular C-based language, you might see something like this. You've got a method called insert that appears to take two parameters. One seems to be a string, and one seems to be some kind of integer. Not quite sure what it's for. I might need to go and look up the description of this to find out what it's actually doing. Now, the way that we actually do this in Objective-C is that the method name changes, and the method name defines what the 2 or 3 or 4 arguments are. So in Objective-C, we'd see something like this. The two arguments get split up and put at different parts of the method name. We've got an object here called title, and then it says insert string colon and passes the first argument, which is a string. We're using the @ sign, a string literal saying tonight only, then a space, and then at index colon 0. And that's the second argument. Now, it might first seem like all we're having is a second named parameter, but really what's happening here is that the name of the method is insert string colon at index colon. The full name of the method is insert string at index, and it takes two arguments that are pulled apart. So this might look very different from what you're used to, but the idea is the same. We're calling a method that takes two parameters, and this is the way that we call it in Objective-C. So as we go forward, we're going to see many more examples of this, and we'll see how to define these methods as well, not just how to call them, but how to make our own. But this is the format that we're going to use. You're going to be very used to seeing these square brackets for calling methods on objects in Objective-C.